So, this is like a lot of the sichos in the first halakim, they'll a lot of times gather a few points on the parsha. And the same thing over here, in this parsha, on Parsha Kiseitze, is going to bring different points that's on the parsha that are seemingly unrelated. If we want, we can try to analyze and see there's a certain chut hamekasher, there's a certain common denominator, but really it's three different topics we're going to talk about. First is very, very short. Pashaseinu matzchilu with pasuk Kiseitze l'cham alevecha nasana Hashem alakecha biyadecha v'shivisa shivyoi. What happens when you go to war and you get a captive? Now, the simple shot in the parsha, it talks about what happens afterwards, after you get the captive, and there is a beautiful woman over there, how to marry her, and so on. What are the halachas? But Chassidus focuses on the very war itself, how the war is waged, what is the result of the war, etc. Everything has to have the spiritual component. It's going on the person's negative aspect. Why are they called enemies? Now, what does it mean going to war? It doesn't mean, like the Baal Shem Tov says, do not break the body. We don't believe in fasting or afflictions. So what's it mean going to war with your body? What does it mean going to war with your nefesh habahamis, with your animal soul? You need to elevate them. You need to refine them. You need to make them more spiritual. Many Amarim, it speaks about the idea that Shas Tzloisa, Shas Karova, the Zohar says, that this war takes place during davening, during prayer, during tefillah, is a time when we have to take on the nefesh habahamis, we need to refine it, we need to elevate it. They do not want to become refined. They want to be involved in the physical world. They want to pursue material enjoyments. There's an expression in the Gemara that two litigants that come to Bezdin need to present themselves together at Bezdin. If one comes first and presents his his opinion, his complaints first, we cannot guarantee that the Bezdin is going to be fair, because they heard first one over the other. So Chassidus uses that term called akdim et hanisa concerning the nefesh habahamis. We know that the animal soul comes into the person immediately when he's born. The godly soul, the nefesh halakis, is something that is fully revealed at 13. So the nefesh habahamis had a head start of 13 years. So it's akdim et hanisa. So because of that, since it had that head start, it makes it a difficult war for the nefesh halakis to be able to elevate the nefesh habahamis, to be able to refine it. Sometimes we see a very difficult battle, and we don't know if we can go out and even fight it at all. So you just go out there. Don't go ahead and overthink it. Go to war. If you did your part, you went out to war, the next step Hashem will take care of. He'll already give it over into your hands. What does it mean you will get captives? So Chassidus explains that in everything in this world there are divine and godly sparks, nitzutzos of kedusha, that are in captivity in that physical thing. And when I go out and I elevate and I make things more spiritual, I use the physical world for a mitzvah, I make a bracha on food and so on, so then I'm elevating the spark. So not only will the nefesh habahamis not defeat me, but I will extract, I will capture, I will relieve the sparks of kedusha that are in captivity. The Rav Tvois b'koyach shoyer. Chassidus always brings down what it says in the pasuk. It says that an ox, even though an ox is lower than a human being, But if a human being had to plant the field and harvest the field without the help of an animal, he would only be able to do so much. By using an ox, there are many more harvests. Rav tvuis b'koyach shoyer. This means the same thing. By using and elevating the nefesh habahamis that's likened to an animal, it's likened to an ox, so we can accomplish so much more than if we wouldn't have elevated the animal that's within us. By the way, in many places he explains, Vishavisa Shivyai. Why does it say he captures his captives? That means that initially these divine sparks were in captivity, and you're really releasing them from their captivity. So you're elevating these sparks of holiness that are in things that are not explicitly godly, and by using the things for Elokus, by going out to war, just going out, that's already enough to be able to elevate them. But again, this just going out is a very powerful thing, because sometimes we see something that's like too overwhelming. So the Rebbe says, you go out, and then Hashem will take care of the rest. That's one topic. Then the Rebbe talks over here about a totally different topic that the Chumash talks about in the days of the Torah and afterwards. Roofs used to be not slanted like our roofs, but they used to be flat. And not only that, but they were actually used. People used to put up things over there to dry. They used to dry certain fruits and things. So it was a common thing that people actually climbed on the roof. So the Torah speaks about the din that's called Micah, that you're supposed to make a fence around the roof in the simple reason so that a person should not fall off, chas v'shalom, hurt themselves. The Indian mitzvah asiyas Micah, shalani echad b'michtav, the Rebbe relates a letter that someone asked him. Hatam la'Micah mishum sakana kekasav loisasim damim beisecha kipal noifel amenu. That's why you make the Micah, you make this fence. V'adei Rambam poisek sha'al mitzvah shemishum sakana ein mevorchim. There are three types of brachas. There's called birchas hanenin, that's brachas that we make over food. There's birchas haidah, these are brachas of praise. Then there's called birchas hamitzvahs. Birchas hamitzvahs means where you make a bracha when you put up a mezuzah, that's a bracha on a mitzvah. You make a bracha on blowing the shofar, that's a mitzvah. You make a bracha on a talus, you make a bracha on putting on film, that's a mitzvah. Amongst the mitzvahs, there's an exception, says the Rambam, where you're not going to make a bracha on it, even though it's a mitzvah. And that's a mitzvah that comes just to prevent some type of danger from occurring. So therefore, this person asked the Rebbe in a letter, since the Rambam says that a mitzvah that's only to prevent a danger, we don't make a bracha on such a mitzvah, how come do we find v'ilu ba'oise perek atzmai, in that very chapter in Hilchas Brachas, the Rambam himself writes, Poiska Rambam, shebeshas asiyas Micah yesh levorich asher kiddushanu mitzvayis v'tzivanu lasis Micah. So how come when we make this fence around the roof, are we obligated in making a bracha, since the reason that we make the fence around the roof is to protect that no one should get hurt? But Pashas yesh makom lahasbir, the feature Asa Inyan Shavaloi Sasim Tam Dame Beischa Nitin Lahazder Bedrachim Acherim Veloy Ayadei Micah Veloy Asiyas Micah, for example. Mishum Shechoyves Asiyas Micah Yeshna Rakish Abayis Kavoy Ma'akarka Yudfochim. First of all, if you have a house that's lower, the roof is lower than 10 tfachim, 10 handbreadths from the ground. Let's say you have like a subterranean, a basement type of thing. So then you don't have to make a Micah, because a Micah is we're only worried from 10 tfachim and higher. So therefore, yeshna efay efsharis lahan michasagag, you can make the roof lower. Or if you can't make the roof lower because it's too hard, let's say, to dig and make the house go deeper in the ground, or like bias karkarish sarabim, you can add to the floor, to the pavement, to the outside of the house, you can make the lawn much higher. Also, you make it like our roofs, not flat, but you make it on a diagonal, on a slant. So then again, people are not going to go up there. There's no din of mica. It's only when it's a flat roof. You will prevent anybody from getting hurt by any one of these three options. But he doesn't have the mitzvah of mica. So you see that you got to have the mitzvah of making the fence that is independent of preventing someone from getting hurt, because you can prevent a person from getting hurt in other ways, not just by the fence. Since there's something additional in this idea of leisosim damim bebeischa, so the Rebbe says this is an insufficient explanation. Baram ein has b'zem maspik dayat tzorich shekein im kol hatam asiyas hamaykom shum sakonam chayzeres hakushalam kaima real kagoinda ein mevorchim. True, there are other ways to avoid the danger, but in those cases where I didn't do all those different things, I didn't make the roof lower than 10 tvachim, or I didn't make the roof on a slant, so then there's a danger. And the reason I'm making the mica is to prevent the danger. And the Rambam says that if it's a mitzvah, to be able to prevent the danger, we don't make a bracha on it. So the Rebbe is going to say a very interesting thing. There are two separate mitzvahs over here. One mitzvah is making the fence, and a separate mitzvah, even though it could be related, is not to cause any danger through your property. El shalamite shel davar haribasisa Michael galgecha v'lo yisasim dam beveisecha mahavim shnei tzivuyim nifradim v'lo yisasim damim beveisecha eina nimuk lasiyas hamaika. The mitzvah of the mica is something separate. V'lo yisasim damim beveisecha is not just an explanation why you should make the mica, but rather it's its own mitzvah. So the Rebbe says, how do you know such a thing? Maybe they're really one thing. Harambam kaveh klal b'shorshe hamitzvos shetaimei hamitzvos einam nimnim nechshavim lemitzvos nefrodos b'minyan hataryag. There are certain Rishonim, the Rambam and other colleagues, who are known as moinei hamitzvos. The Gemara says there are 613 mitzvahs. 248 positive mitzvahs aseh and 365 lois aseh. There is, in certain mitzvahs, there are disagreements if they are counted, and the Rambam has certain rules what type of mitzvahs are counted. Just to give an example of something totally unrelated to this, something that was only told to the Yidden to do in the Midbar, for example, not collecting more mon than you were supposed to, not collecting mon on Shabbos, etc., etc. It wasn't la'olam, it wasn't la'doiris. That's not counted in the 613 mitzvahs. The 613 mitzvahs is only counting those things that are for all time. That's one of the klolim in the mitzvahs. Another thing, another klal, and that's the one that's negay over here, is that we do not count the mitzvah and its reason as two separate things. So let's say you're going to say, it says you should sit in Sukkos on Sukkos because Ki Basukkos Shafti es Bnei Yisrael, because I settled the Yidden in shelters in the Midbar. So it's not two separate mitzvahs, it's one mitzvah. The reason of the mitzvah and the mitzvah is one thing. If you are going to tell me v'loisasim damim bebeischa is a reason for Micah, so then it would only be one mitzvah. But we find that Rambam counts them as two. V'ilukan moina Rambam b'minyan ha-mitzvahs shtei mitzvah shoynes. B'minyan mitzvah says the numbers of the positive commandments u'moines mitzvah Micah. Or b'minyan loisaseh u'moines mitzvah loisasim damim. So this is an open proof that the Rambam doesn't look at v'loisasim damim bebeischa as a reason alone for the asiyas ma'ika. Yesh eifel liris mekan shev'lo yisosem damim einay tam l'vasisa maike ki im mitzvah nefredes. How does the Rambam know that? So the Rambam knows it from the Sifri. Mekoirish al Rambam b'Sifri. V'sham nemar vasisa Michael agagecha zu mitzvah leisasim dam bebeischa mitzvah loisasei. So that's what the Rambam takes it. Now, of course, everything the Rebbe is trying to bring out, what that means, reflecting in my own soul, in my own service. It says, in the Torah, it says the expression kisivne bayis chodosh. Then v'asisa Michael l'gagecha. It doesn't say kisivne bayis, or if you buy a home. The truth is, it applies even if you buy, even if you have an old home, whatever. Still in all, the Torah uses the expression kisivne bayis chodosh, a new home. And then you have to make a fence around your roof. Why? B'shasha Yehudi boina binyan chadash ein dai begdarim shahayu loy kaidem lachein asher al yadam amad b'chol hanisyonos. A fence is meant to protect us. There's spiritual fences, like we learn in Pirkei Avos. It says over there that a person is supposed to make a siyag l'Torah. A person is supposed to make a fence around the Torah. He doesn't just say, the Torah said this is permitted, that's it. No. There are cases where you need to make a fence and say, even though the Torah says it's permitted, I got to be careful not to do it, so I shouldn't come from that to do something prohibited. So you could just say, okay, there's one group of fences and that's it. Whatever the Chachamim established. So the Rebbe says not that way. When you are in a bayis chadash, you're doing a new avodah, you are facing new challenges. Every person, every time he starts something new, there are new challenges in their lives. And because of those new challenges, one needs to put new protections into place. They need to put a Michael Gagecha. All Liyos Vizbarach B'Levav Shalom Yelei Kiv Shavar Reish Noisav Leichata Ach All Ladav Shema Acher Shoever Levayis Chadash Mutels Olav Avoid Chadasham Va'olav Lidog Sheyuchol Lamed Minisyonis Achadashim Ma'alulim Liyas V'Avodas Achadasham. A person could say, I'm ready. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a mature adult. I'm 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old. I've seen it all. I don't have to worry. I kept my cool. I didn't lose myself, whatever. He says, no. You're starting something new. You're moving to a new place. You're starting a new job. You need to now look at things with a different eye. You don't know if your previous experiences can be an indication of future experiences. What do they say over there with funds, with equity? Past results are not indicative of future earnings. The same thing. I could have been great for the last 40, 50, 60, 80 years. There's no guarantee what's going to be tomorrow that I start something new. So he gives an example. Someone that was spent his life in yeshiva, and now he's going to deal in the world. For him, it's a new type of avodah. It's a bayis chadash for him. So then, in yeshiva, he didn't have to deal with such situations. And the truth is, it's not just someone that's transitioning from a yeshiva life to a outside yeshiva life. Every single day, it's like going from yeshiva to outside yeshiva. He starts off the day with davening, he starts off the day with learning, and then all of a sudden, he finds himself thrown into an outside of yeshiva environment. So then, whether he's like a yeshiva bacher that's leaving the walls of yeshiva, or he's an ordinary person that's leaving the walls of davening and learning, all of lasis maike k'dei lishmer shinyone ha'olam va'uvdin d'choil yiyu k'fi ha'roi k'dei shelo yeh bahem damim bebeis chavi yipel ha'noifel which can mean a spiritual falling as well. You don't want to have that the person should fall spiritually from wherever he was before. Kishem shebegashmi tzarech hamayka liyis gavoy min habayis, vaf gavoy megag habayis, kach gam beruchnius tzarech liyis hamayka mimoker naila yoiser, siyua medargel yoyne yoiser. The Rebbe adds here another point. The power and the strength to be able to set these protections into place, I need to have assistance from an even higher level. Just like the mic is placed on top of the house, which the house is already on top of 10 tvachim, and on top of that I have to put the mic. Lefichach yesh makim vaf tzoyrech levarech al asiyas mic. Now we can understand the spiritual reason for making a bracha. A bracha indicates an empowerment, a strength from above. Shekein ketzad afshari es asiyas hamayke, eich mesugal adam lahavis hamayke madarga nailus madarga bayu oimed. If a person is in one level and you need to bring down this fence, this protection from a higher level, how do I reach that higher level? That's what a bracha is about. L'shem kach yesh tzoyrech bebracha lefi pirish razal bracha meloshna hamavriches hagefen. It says that when a person is like taking a vine and like putting it down into the ground, the term is used, hamavrich. So the same thing, a bracha is from the word drawing things down. We're drawing down divine energy. In a similar vein, before we eat food, we want to have divine energy and power to be able to eat the food the way a Jew is supposed to eat it, to elevate the sparks, like we said before. So he says, Kaloimar hamshocha, it's drawing down. Baruch ato havaya. Havaya yudke vavke, that is Hashem's greatest name. Hanaylam min ha'olam, it's beyond the worlds. Aidei Elokeinu, the name of Elokim shows on Hashem's gevura, his might. Tzimtzum eleinu, he constricted himself. He took that unbelievable name of his and he made it Elokeinu. He brings it down, he constricts himself to bring down that power to us. It comes down so low that highest, most level, through the Elokeinu, through the tzimtzum, through the constriction, can come down even into the world, that Hashem could manifest himself as a king over the world. Baruch ato Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam asher kirishanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu. The lashon tzavta v'ischabrus, that we are joining ourselves with Hashem and we are joining the world with Hashem. The word mitzvahs and the word togetherness. Lasis maika, that's the end of the bracha, to make a maika. Mitoich kach bo hakoyach v'afsharus lasis maika gavoya asarat tvachim. From here, from this bracha, comes the capability and the possibility to make a maika that's high 10 tvachim. Al gag oilam habriya shu karka oilam ha'atzilus hakosa b'kisvei ha'arizal al pikabola. It explains all the different high levels that the maika represents. Ois dalet. Hayra amforetus mikola amur. So the Rebbe says, we also have now, we are going into a new avodah. Every year, we have a new avodah. We can't just rely on, last Rosh Hashanah was good, the Rosh Hashanah before that was good. I'm entering a new year. A new year's a new avodah. So I need to approach it with new fences, with a new maika. Kedugma sayros koit just more chamiad more shesh lahaisi b'chol Rosh Hashanah teisefes behidur mitzas asay u'bezihiris meloisa banhaga toiva. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe's father-in-law, said that there's 3 components that a person needs to take on upon themselves every Rosh Hashanah. To add in something, beautifying a mitzas asay, being extra careful in one of the mitzvahs loisa, and also some good hanhaga that doesn't fit into either of these 2 categories. It's not that we're talking about necessarily that someone was missing out something that says in Shulchan Aruch. He was doing everything the way it's supposed to be. Still in all, every Rosh Hashanah, it's a new house. It's a new avodah. So we need to put up a maika again. that every single Rosh Hashanah there's a totally new divine light and energy, like the Alter Rebbe says in the end of Tanya in the Geras HaKodesh. Therefore, kach b'shoshu Yehudi peseach avodah chadasha im b'shoshu yitzim mekasel beis medrash hala olam v'im b'chol yom lachar tefillah v'alim raboiker b'shoshu maskal lavim v'magi in yonei olam Allah v'lahoisif mashu v'amadim atzavi hakodim. Literally, the Rebbe says, you're leaving a place of holiness to a place that's not holy openly. Do something extra. Make sure that the holiness stays with you. We are given this power from above. Another idea of the 10 Tfachim is lahamshich es ha'or chodosh b'chol eser koiches ha'nefesh. We have the 10 soul powers of the intellect and the emotions. L'mikoiches chabara l'koyach ha'maisa. From the powers of my intellect, chokhmah bina das, till my power of action. Va'oz bo l'dei tikun hav'lo yisasim damim v'yiplan noifel v'goymer. Then you ensure that there will not be any negative consequences. No one will fall. Va'adra, but just the opposite. Yesh kan kitiferes odom l'sheves bayis, that the beauty of a person is to be in a home, dwelling in a home, when you made a home in such a way that's infused with this protections, with this assurance that this new home will be infused with holiness. Now, a third topic, and that's about what it says at the end of this week's Parsha, the mitzvah of remembering what Amalek did to us. And this is going to be connected with things that we don't have any connection these days with Amalek. Therefore, we need to for sure understand what the spiritual idea is. So we started off talking about the spiritual idea of Kisei Tzil Macham Alevecho. Then he spoke about the spiritual idea of the mitzvah of Micah. Now he's going to talk about the spiritual idea of Amalek. Yesh Deis HaSoivre Shekriyas Parshas Zachar He mid the Raisa. So there is a positive commandment to remember what Amalek did to you. The question is, what exactly is that? How does one fulfill that mitzvah aseh? So there's certain opinions that hold, and this is what we usually practice, is to make sure to hear from the Torah scroll what Amalek did, to be able to fill this mitzvah of Zachar as a Chas Amalek. Melvad ha'esed shel Zachar yesh gam lav. It says loy sishkach. It says don't forget. So in other words, again, there's two mitzvahs, like we said over there about the Micah, Vasisa Micah Lagecha, mitzvah aseh, loy sitin dam beisecha, mitzvah loisa. The same thing in remembering Amalek. There's one mitzvah, mitzvah aseh, to remember. A second mitzvah is not to forget. There is a discussion, are women obligated to hear this parsha, are women obligated to remember about Amalek, and there's different reasons to say that women are not obligated in it. But we do know that women are obligated in all negative commandments. So since there's a negative commandment of mitzvah loisil loisishkach, what Amalek did to you, and these two mitzvahs are linked, the Zachar and the loitishkach. So once they are obligated on loitishkach, you shouldn't forget, they're also obligated on Zachar. And that's why a lot of women have the custom, they try to come to shul, at least to hear Parsh Kiseitze, or the end of Parsh B'Shalach, where it talks about Zachar Shas Amalek. Or sometimes they'll hear the Kriyas HaTorah and Purim, another option. This is the point that the Rebbe is aiming for. This is how important it is that everybody is mechuyev in it, men and women. This means it's a very important mitzvah to us, and therefore we need to understand what does it mean to us today. We have no Amalek. Amram bagashmis ein chala at chayvis mechias Amalek. Yes, and after this hasayvrish hamitzvah matalas ala melech. Legayis b'nei Yisrael limchoy zarish al Amalek. That's his job. It's not our job. There's no personal job to me. Let's say if I were to know that a certain person is Amalek, I do not have an obligation to kill him. The obligation, according to the way that Rebbe is explaining now, is on the king. The king has a job. Amongst different jobs that the king has, is he needs to take an army and kill the nation of Amalek. There's no personal, individual chiyuv that if I know where there's an Amaleki, I need to go ahead and kill him. So therefore, it's obviously not applicable now because we don't have a Jewish king. There's a different opinion that holds, no, it's an individual mitzvah. Every single Jew has their own personal mitzvah to kill out Amalek. Still in all, it doesn't apply now. Mishum, Allah, first of all, ha'inyan b'becheshme rak bezman shayad Yisrael tkifa. Only when Jews are in a situation of control and power do they have this mitzvah. When they are not in control, when they are under the control of others, like the Rebbe pointed out, even in the wonderful independent state of Israel, they're always worried about what America will say, etc., etc. So it's the Yad Yisrael Tkifa doesn't really apply. We're not in control, and because we're not in control, the whole mitzvah of eradicating Amalek doesn't apply. Beis, another problem is there's no way to know who's from Amalek. Beis, v'rakish yadua barer mi uzar shal Amalek. Ach, mishabah Sanicherev bilbos oilam. We know that Sanicherev, who was the Melech Achshur, came, and he was a very clever king. He didn't want to have any rebellions. He didn't want to have any movements of liberation movements. So what did he do? When he conquered a country, and he had another country he conquered, he did population exchanges. He took the people from one country and moved them to that country, and from that country he moved it to a third country. And he mixed up all the nations that now we don't even know who's who. So therefore, if you bump into a person, even if, let's say, he lives in a landmass that was known to be where the Amalekim lived, you go according to the majority. The fact that the person came from there, you assume that he's not an Amaleki. That's first, will be in power. Secondly, the animals and so on. In the physical, we don't have that now. Avi'ilu ba'avoida ruchnis kaima inyan gamata shari kol Yisrael chayovim b'schiras ma'isa Amalek va'afilu noshim she'einon yoytzis l'mochama chayovis b'davar. They are obligated to do this spiritual idea of Mechias Amalek. When it comes to physical destroying of Amalek, women have no obligation to go out to war. All the times where it says in the Torah, make war against Amalek or make war against the 7 nations, this is not obligatory for women. But the spiritual idea, we said they're mechuyev to remember, because they're mechuyev not to forget. That means the spiritual idea, whatever the spiritual eradication of Amalek now means, it applies to women also. And not only that, it's also not a one-time event. You'll say it's not once in a lifetime, but it's once a year. When we read Parsha Zachar, that's when we have that chiyuv. You say no. There's actually halacha. And in our Sidurim, we have it, part of the Sheish Zachiris, we say it after Shacharis every day. Well, and this doesn't make a difference. Shabbos, middle of the week, Yom Kippur, whatever, we always say that. The fact that we have an obligation to do this every day to remember Amalek is Hayra ad kama chashuva zechiris ma'aseh Amalek beruchnius lefachos ba'avodas Hashem b'chol hazmanim. So now he's finally going to get to the point. So what is the Amalek that we have to eradicate? In Yon shal Amalek beruchnius hu asher karcha baderech. That's the Torah said. The simple meaning, Asher Karcha Baderech, is he met you on the way. The whole statement doesn't really make sense. He met us on the way. He was out to attack us. Amalek was a great-great-grandchild of Esav. Amalek was untergenommen the covet for sein Seid, the expression is. He was fighting the war of his great-grandfather, whatever, that Esav hated Yaakov. And when he saw that the Yidden, the Bnei Yaakov, came out of Mitzrayim, he couldn't stand it. So what does it say? Asher korcha baderech. He met you in the way. It sounds like two people bumped into each other and then one guy punched him in the nose. He didn't just meet him in the way. It's a very strange expression. Therefore, there's another deeper meaning to the word karcha from the word kar, cold. Hu mekarer u'mitzanen kepirish hamedrash. He cools off. He makes cold b'derech ha'toyra v'amitzvahs, in the way of Torah mitzvahs. The Medrash uses an example and says that Amalek was the first nation to attack the Yidden when they went out of Mitzrayim. Everybody was terrified after they heard about all the miracles that happened in Mitzrayim. They were terrified. You know, you have a nation like this, they totally wiped the floor with the Mitzrayim, Yamsuf, Makas B'chayres, all the other Makas. People were terrified. Amalek said, I'm going to defend my great-great-grandfather. I'm going to go defend Esav over here. And it was within a few weeks. It was between Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. It was a few weeks after they went out of Mitzrayim, not like after 40 years in the desert. So the Medrash likens it to you have a very hot bath, and everybody's scared to walk into that bath in the public bathhouses, until one guy comes and says, I'm going to jump in. It says, that guy gets burnt. He gets scalded from the hot bath. But everybody else already, they're not so worried about it. The same thing, Amalek. Everybody was scared of the Yidden. Came Amalek, jumped in, he got burnt by attacking the Yidden. But ever since then, everybody else said, okay, it's possible to attack the Yidden. So we find even the Medrash uses the idea that Amalek is about cooling things off. But we're talking here spiritually. So the purpose of Amalek is to cool a person off in the way of Torah mitzvahs. It says, B'derech tzeischa mitzrayim. Where were they going? This was before Matan Torah. They were going out of Egypt. They were going to receive the Torah. Amalek is the coldness on the way to Torah mitzvahs. It cools us off. We're passionate. We want to do something. Comes that little Amalek within our mind, says, what are you getting so excited about? Okay, yeah, you got to do Torah mitzvahs. Don't go crazy about it. That's Amalek. Not just once in a lifetime, once a year, every day. All of lahamshech ulolachem bekridush Amalek. A person needs to be passionate and inflamed about a service of Hashem in Torah and davening, and not to allow Amalek to cool him off and say, you were excited yesterday, why do you have to be excited today? B'chol yoim b'terem tzeisei l'magim minyonei ha'olam ala adam lihislahev b'milchamtei neged Amalek v'davar zeh nasa b'tfilah. Davening is what ensures that the person is passionate the rest of the day. As excited as he gets during davening for his connection to Hashem, that helps him that even once he leaves the shul, once he leaves the yeshiva, once he leaves his davening, he'll still remain passionate. Be'emtzaris ha'slavas atfilah mesugel hu lilachem ba'amalek b'shah shubah b'magim minyonei olam. Zu hachana lemechia zari shel Amalek gam begashim sebias hamelch Mashiach b'mher v'meinu. By us eradicating Amalek beruchnius, removing our coldness to spirituality in our spiritual part, that brings about for Mashiach to come to actually get rid of Amalek physically. And the Rebbe concludes, Mashamuchar lefarsimu. Shemochemes Amalek tzrichalias b'chol dor v'dor v'chol yom v'yom v'ein li stapik mashanasa kvar. You shouldn't be satisfied what happened before. Iafshar la'adam li stapik b'kachshar li saba kosher av kosher. He had a good zayda. He had a good father. Afu atzmi hu the kosher. He himself was good. El sha'olav lahasmid b'milchamtei b'kridu shel Amalek. He has to be constant in battling the coldness of Amalek. Shekem mishum sheyesh by hanachsholim Olav lizganev Amalek v'yizanek b'chal kol nechshol machrecha. There could always be the people that like drop off by the sides, and Amalek will grab hold of that. Adli de mochay timcha zecher Amalek b'yis HaMashiach v'mochay emcha zecher Amalek, that Hashem says, I will eradicate on top of what you eradicate, b'karev mamish, soon mamish. So, if we look, even though it's three separate sichos, said it three separate times. One is from Tafshin Yudal Shabbos Parshas Kiseitze. One is from Yud Gimel Tammuz Tafshin Tezayin, and another one is from Shabbos Parshas Zocher Tafshin Tezayin. But you could see a common thread over here about approaching things that are outside and not being affected by them, and realizing that whenever you're going to the outside, kitetze, you're going into a new avodah, a new home, when you're going into every single day, you need to make sure, don't rely on what was there before. You need to go ahead and take on the Amalek, you got to take on the Oivecha, the enemies, and then Hashem will help you succeed in all ways.